Thomas Brennan had been wearing the same dark janitor's coat for nearly 15 years. It was well-made, sturdy, the kind of thing that lasted if you took care of it. At 62, he'd learned that taking care of things was what mattered most. The coat hung long, almost like a robe, and beneath it he wore simple black clothing that didn't show stains from his work. His head, bald and smooth, caught the morning light as he pushed through the revolving doors of First National Bank. The lobby was something to behold. Marble floors polished to a mirror shine, tall columns reaching up to vaulted ceilings, and that particular hush that expensive places have. Thomas had cleaned buildings like this one for most of his adult life, always at night when the important people were gone. Being here during business hours felt strange, like wearing someone else's shoes. He'd come in on his lunch break, walking the 6 blocks from the office building where he worked. His daughter Sarah needed new textbooks for her college courses, and he wanted to make sure the money was there. Nothing fancy, just checking his balance. That's all he wanted to do. The woman at the information desk looked up as he approached. She was young, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back tight and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, her gaze traveling from his worn coat to his work boots. "Yes, ma'am," Thomas said quietly. "I need to check my account balance, please." Before she could respond, a voice cut through the air from behind the marble counter. Sharp, professional, with an edge like ice. "Excuse me." A woman in an impeccably tailored gray suit emerged from a side office. Victoria Chen, according to the nameplate she wore. Regional CEO, it said. She was perhaps in her mid-50s, with dark hair streaked with silver, and the kind of posture that came from years of authority. "Is there a problem here?" The desk clerk straightened. "No, Miss Chen. This gentleman just needs to check his balance." Victoria's eyes swept over Thomas, and something flickered across her face. Not quite contempt, but close. The kind of look people give when they've already decided who you are. "Our ATMs are quite simple to use," she said, her tone suggesting he might not be capable of figuring that out. "Just outside, to the left." Thomas felt the familiar weight of being dismissed. He'd felt it 1,000 times before, but he stood his ground, gentle but firm. "I appreciate that, ma'am, but I'd prefer to speak with someone inside if that's all right. Just want to make sure everything's in order." Victoria's laugh was brief, almost a scoff. "I'm sure the ATM will suffice for your needs. We have clients with rather complex accounts waiting." She gestured toward the row of private offices where well-dressed people sat discussing investments and trusts. The desk clerk looked uncomfortable. Thomas saw her nameplate, Jennifer. She reminded him of his daughter, young and trying to navigate a world that wasn't always kind. "It's fine," Thomas said softly, starting to turn away. He didn't want to cause trouble, never had. "Wait." Jennifer's voice was gentle. "Mr. Chen, MS Chen, it's actually bank policy that any customer can request in-person service. It'll just take a moment." Victoria's expression tightened. "Jennifer, I don't think—" "It's policy, ma'am," Jennifer repeated, quieter but steady. There was a pause, one of those moments that stretches out. Then Victoria's jaw set. "Fine, I'll handle this myself. Come with me." She led Thomas to a small office, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. She sat behind the desk, fingers moving across her keyboard with practiced efficiency. "Account number or social security number," she said, not looking at him. Thomas provided his information. He watched her face as she pulled up his account, expecting the usual quick glance and dismissal. But her expression changed. Her fingers stopped moving. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the screen. Then she looked up at Thomas, really looked at him, for the first time. "There must be some mistake," she said slowly. "Is something wrong?" Thomas asked, concern creeping into his voice. "I know I'm not rich, but I've been careful with my money, saved what I could for my daughter's education. Is the account compromised?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, softened. "Mr. Brennan, your account shows a balance of $4.7 million. Thomas blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" $4,700,000. "And change." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the ventilation system. "That can't be right," Thomas said finally. "I have maybe 42,000. I've been saving for 30 years. Every spare dollar. But that can't be my account. Victoria turned the monitor so he could see. There it was, his name, his account number, and a figure that made no sense at all. Is someone stealing from me? Is my account being used for something illegal? Thomas felt his chest tighten. He'd worked so hard to keep everything clean and simple. No, Victoria said, and her voice was different now, gentler. May I ask you something personal? Do you know a Harold Brennan? Thomas went still. That was my father's name. He passed away 6 months ago. I see. Victoria pulled up another screen. It appears there were several deposits made to your account over the past 25 years. Automatic transfers. The notation says, for Sarah's future. Thomas sat down heavily in the chair he'd been standing beside. His hands were shaking. My father, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We didn't speak much these last years. He didn't approve when my wife left. Thought I couldn't raise Sarah alone. When I told him I was going to work as a janitor, that I'd do whatever it took to keep her with me and put her through school, he said I was foolish, that I was wasting my life. He paused, memories flooding back. The last time we talked 5 years ago, it ended in an argument. I told him I didn't need his approval, that Sarah and I were doing fine on our own. He said I was too proud to accept help. I told him I didn't want his money. I wanted to do this myself. Victoria was listening now, really listening. But he gave it anyway, Thomas continued, tears beginning to slip down his weathered face. All these years, quietly, while I scrubbed floors and cleaned toilets and counted every penny, making sure Sarah had what she needed. While I wore the same coat and walked to work to save bus fare. While I ate sandwiches for dinner so she could have fresh fruit and vegetables. He was there helping, and he never told me, never took away my dignity, just helped. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. And I never got to thank him, never got to tell him that Sarah graduated top of her high school class, that she got into a good college, that we made it. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. Mr. Brennan, there's a note here, attached to the account. It says, tell my son he was right. He didn't need my help, but I needed to give it. Tell him he's the best father I ever knew. Tell him I'm proud. Thomas covered his face with his hands and wept. Not quietly, not with dignity, but with the full weight of grief and love, and years of trying so hard to be enough. Victoria stood, came around the desk and did something she hadn't done in years. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and waited. Just waited while this man, this janitor in his worn coat, mourned the father who'd loved him in the only way he knew how. When Thomas finally composed himself, Victoria handed him a box of tissues from her desk. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to. Please don't apologize, Victoria said firmly. I'm the one who should apologize. When you walked in here, I saw your coat and made assumptions. I thought I knew who you were. I was wrong. She sat back down, but differently now, more humbly. My father was a janitor, she said quietly. In Shanghai, before we came to America. He cleaned offices at night so I could go to school during the day. I was ashamed of him when I was young. Wouldn't let him come to school events. Wouldn't introduce him to my friends. Her eyes glistened. He worked himself to exhaustion so I could get my education, go to business school, have this career. He died 10 years ago. I never told him I was proud of him. Never thanked him for his sacrifice. Thomas looked at her, and understanding passed between them. When I saw you today, Victoria continued, I saw someone I thought was beneath me. But really, I was seeing my father, and I treated you the way I was always afraid others treated him. The way I treated him, when I was too young and foolish to understand what it means to do honest work with dignity. She smiled sadly. Your daughter is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Thomas said. She's everything good in my life. Victoria nodded. Mr. Brennan, I'd like to help you manage this inheritance, if you'll allow it. Personal service, no fees. It's the least I can do. I appreciate that, Thomas said, but I don't want anything fancy. Just want to make sure Sarah can finish her education without loans, maybe help her get started in life. The rest, well, maybe I can help other folks who are working hard and trying to raise their kids right. That sounds like exactly what your father would have wanted. Thomas stood to leave, then paused. Can I ask you something? Of course. What was your father's name? Chen Wei, she said softly. It means great strength. He raised someone with compassion and honesty, Thomas said. That takes great strength, too. I think he'd be proud of who you became. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for that. As Thomas left the bank, his worn coat catching the afternoon light, Jennifer at the front desk smiled at him. A real smile this time. He smiled back. Victoria watched from her office window as he walked down the street. This man who'd spent his life cleaning buildings so his daughter could reach for the stars. She thought of her own father, his hands rough from work, his pride in her success. That evening she went home and found the old photograph of her father in his janitor's uniform. She placed it on her desk at work the next day, where everyone could see it. Thomas walked back to his job, his heart full of grief and gratitude. That night, when he called Sarah to tell her about her grandfather's gift, they cried together. Then they laughed, remembering the stubborn old man who'd loved them both in his own complicated way. The money would change some things. Sarah wouldn't have to worry about loans. Thomas could maybe retire someday, though he wasn't sure he wanted to. But the important things, the real things, those stayed the same. The love between a father and daughter, the dignity of honest work, the quiet ways people show they care. Sometimes kindness looks like a humble man in a worn coat, counting his pennies to build his daughter's future. Sometimes it looks like a proud father who helps without asking for thanks. And sometimes it looks like a CEO who remembers where she came from and treats others with the respect her own father deserved. That's the thing about kindness, Thomas thought, as he pushed his cleaning cart down the familiar hallways that night. It echoes across generations, teaching us to see each other truly, to honor the work that people do, and to understand that we're all just trying our best to love the people who matter most.